I have finally come to terms and am at a place in my life where I'm ready to share my story about being a Jehovah's Witness and being shunned, or in their terms, disfellowshipped out of the religion. You might have heard of Jehovah's Witnesses before. They're actually a form of Christianity, and they're best known for going door to door and recruiting people. They're also known for not celebrating any holidays, not celebrating birthdays, not taking blood transfusion. I was born in Baghdad, Iraq, and I was born as a Catholic. I am of Chaldean descent. My family moved to America in 1981. I have two older sisters. And when I was 6 years old, my mom joined the Jehovah's Witness cult. Her sister was already in the cult, and she recruited my mom. And I really, looking back at it now and talking to other friends who also are kind of in a similar situation as me, I feel like the religion preys on people at their most vulnerable point, whether it's just moving from a different country or just not having that network of people to call your own, or call your community, or call your friends. The religion itself, once you're in the cult, it's such a strong community. This is one of the biggest growing religions in the world. When I got kicked out of the religion in December of 2011, there was 7.5 million Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide, and now there's almost 9 million, which is insane. I also know that not only is it a very big growing religion, but it's a worldwide brotherhood, as they say. So like I said earlier, once you're part of this cult, you feel like you just have this huge family, and it's full of love, and it's just all encompassing. But once you get disfellowshipped like I was, that is wiped clear from your life, and you no longer have any of that network anymore. You no longer have that community. You are just like the loneliest person in the world. So let me go into what the word disfellowship means. I'm not here to talk about the religion per se. I'm here to tell you about my experience, and my experience being a disfellowshipped Jehovah's Witness. I have two older sisters who decided not to join the religion, but I really wanted to be a good girl, and I wanted to make my mom happy. And I was already starting to have really good friends inside of the cult, so I decided to stay there, and I got baptized at the Pontiac Silverdome in 1996 in the summer of, it was June. I believe actually it was like the beginning of June of 1996 is when I got baptized into the religion. And growing up in the religion, as I mentioned earlier, you don't celebrate birthdays or holidays, was extremely, extremely isolating. And I'm not sure where you guys live, but where I was from back in Michigan, when it was somebody's birthday, they brought cupcakes or some kind of treat. And if I felt like there was a birthday like at least once a week, like somebody in class's birthday. Well, I was not allowed to participate, and I usually either stood outside the class or I went to the office to preoccupy myself, because I wasn't allowed to celebrate those birthdays, nor was I allowed to participate in anything holiday related. So when it was time to do like Christmas carols or anything like Halloween activities, when kids make up these art projects, I was not allowed to do any of those things. So it was the teacher's responsibility to make something different for me personally. So that was a little challenging, because I never felt like I fit in, and at a very early age I already felt like I was different and I was isolated from everyone else. There were other times too. I'm an 80s baby, so back then we saluted the flag. So everyone stood up, put their hand on their heart, and pledged allegiance. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses are politically neutral, so during that time of pledging of allegiance, I just sat down and I was not allowed to participate at all. But as I said, I was already used to being like an outcast. So for me, it was, I'm not gonna say it wasn't a big deal, but it was just something else that was on the list of things of me being different. So growing up too, you're not allowed to be friends with any of the people that you go to school with, or as an adult, or go to work with. You can go to school with those people, but they can only be your associates. They're not allowed to be your personal friends, because those people that are non-Jehovah's Witnesses can have a quote-unquote worldly influence on you. So say you did have a friend who was outside of the religion, and maybe they had a boyfriend, or they were doing drugs, or they were having sex, or they were just doing something like normal people, I guess, would do, but in the Jehovah's Witness community, that was actually something really bad, and it was actually something that you can get in trouble for in the religion. So you're only allowed to have friends inside of the religion, and that was my community of my closest friends were inside of the religion, whether they went to my congregation or they went to a different congregation and just lived nearby. Going to middle school and high school, that continued. Really could not have any friends outside of the religion, only inside of the religion. And I also could not participate in any after school activities. So I wanted to be part of like the track team or anything like that, and I was not allowed to, because that was me being more around these quote unquote worldly people, and then that would be them being able to influence me more. So that was also not allowed. And then when it came time to go to college, college is not something that the Jehovah's Witnesses encourage people to do. They actually discourage people to go to college, at least when I was in that term. I know after, when I got disfellowshipped, they were a little bit better with people going to college, but when I graduated in 1998, college was definitely frowned upon. They encourage you, however, to go to like a vocational school, maybe study to do something really simple. I went to school to be a massage therapist. I did that for 6 years. So that being said, that's like kind of a whole rally up of the Jehovah's Witnesses and kind of what they believe, my experience in the religion. So I was married to another Jehovah's Witness. He was an American, born and raised in Michigan. When I was 24 and he was 22 when we got married. And I got married to what I felt was this idyllic, perfect family, because I always wanted to be a white girl growing up. I wanted to have blonde hair and blue eyes, and I just wanted to fit in with everyone else. So I married this, what I call a white guy, came from a really good family, and just lived about 45 minutes to 30 to 45 minutes away from where I grew up. And his family was just really nice, and I fell in love with like the whole encompassing picture of the family life. Because at that time, my family life was just a shit show. I failed to mention that my father, who is still Catholic to this day, and my sisters are both Catholic as well, my father abused my mother tremendously when I was growing up, to the fact that, to the point where he actually got put in jail. I can remember 2 different instances where the police came and took him away because he was beating my mom so badly. And if he wasn't beating her, he was calling her all kinds of names. And I grew up listening to that, and it was extremely, extremely hard for me. And my sisters were doing their own thing, and like I said earlier, I wanted to be the good girl, and I wanted to make my mom happy. So I just kept my mouth shut, and I just tried to do other things in my life. So when I was 19 years old, I was working 3 jobs and going to school as a massage therapist. And at the age of 19, I was engaged to a guy that lived in Glendale, California, who I later on broke up with after our engagement of 9 months. And I go into specific detail of how he raped me in a podcast that I just recorded with my husband, along with being sexually molested when I was around 15, 16 by a family member. I go into detail with that with a podcast that I just recorded. So I broke up with him when I was 20 years old, but then, like I said, I got married when I was 24 to this American guy. So I didn't realize how insecure this person was. And I'm not sure if you've ever been with somebody who is insecure or not confident. Whether it's a friend, a partner, a marriage, that person will throw their insecurities on you in some odd shape or form. And it can go from, well, in my case, I would say in most cases, it's usually controlling and it's jealousy. So controlling in the form of, I want you to be home by a certain time, why you're talking to that person, what are you doing? And it could be anything. You could be I could have been having a conversation with the cashier at the grocery store. Why did you have a long conversation with that person? Or I could be at my friend's house. I want you home right now. What are you doing? Like text messaging. I could be talking to his friend. Oh, you were flirting with that person. So it was just this, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And it got to the point where I was just like, I can't stand it. And he never wanted to do anything. He just wanted to stay at home, and I could not do anything either. I just had to sit next to him and watch a movie. It was a lot. And I went from being in a really controlled household to being married to somebody else who was really controlling. And I was already in such a tight little cage from the religion. So the religion, and then my ex-husband at the time, also very controlling. And I felt like I just suffocated and I just couldn't breathe. And I was, at that time, I was a nanny, household manager, private chef for a family. I started working for them a year after I got married. I was married for almost 8 years. What happened was June of 2011, this was right after about 7.5 years of me being, actually 7 years and 2 months after I was married. I ended up having sex with a guy that I knew just one time. This was not an ongoing affair. I had sex with him one time. This was July of 2011. And that was my big wake-up call to say, I am unhappy with this marriage and I needed to do something. I knew I needed to do something, but that right there, me having sex with somebody else, was my big wake-up call. So I did not muster up the boldness to tell my then husband that that happened to me, that I did that, nor did I tell him that I wanted a divorce. So in the end of November, around Thanksgiving of 2011, I mustered up the boldness. I remember driving home. I was listening to a song by Paramore. I think it was All I Wanted Was You, which is like, gives me chills right now to think about it. And like, all I wanted was for him to actually, for us to work out and for him to be more confident. But you cannot give somebody confidence. They have to have it themselves. And no matter how much you say to somebody, you're beautiful or you're good enough or you're amazing, unless that person actually believes it themselves, it's just not gonna happen. So that night I was driving home from work and I was like, this is the day that I'm gonna tell him. I just kept on telling myself, this is the day that I'm gonna tell him that this happened. So I drove home and I was like, we need to talk. I sat on the couch and I told him, and I was like, I had sex with somebody else and I want a divorce. And he freaked out and he said to me, I want to make things work. I don't want a divorce. I love you. I want to be with you. We need to talk to the elders. So the elders are kind of like the priest in the religion. So what happens when you have something to talk about is, we ended up calling one of the local elders on the phone, and then you have to meet with a judicial committee, which is 3 elders. So 3 elders were assigned to my case of me committing fornication or adultery, I should say. And I had, now I can't, now I'm confused of the 2 words. Anyways, I had sex with somebody else. Plain and simple. But I met with these elders and told them my story, and then I said to them that if I stayed married to my husband, that I was most likely probably going to cheat on him again, because this is something that I had been dealing with all these years, and I had been so unhappy, and I just knew in my heart that he needed to change and I needed to leave the situation in order for him to change. And I told my ex-husband, I said, I love you, but I am not in love with you anymore. And he just did not understand it. And my thing too is, I always tell people, if you've been with somebody for X amount of years, I was with him at that point for almost 10 years. So to be with somebody for almost 10 years of your life, of course you're going to have genuine love for them because they shared a huge chunk of your life. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in love with them or that you want to spend the rest of your life with him or her. So after I told the elders that, they said to me that I was not repentant, and that since my husband was the innocent party, he had the chance to say whether or not we should stay married. And since I wasn't the innocent party, I should just shut my mouth. So since I was like, I want a divorce, I don't want to be in this marriage anymore, the elder said I wasn't repentant, so therefore they disfellowshipped me from the congregation. So when you get disfellowshipped, is their terms for being shunned. What happens is a person, one of the elders, when they're giving the announcements, it's usually on a Wednesday or a Thursday meeting, they stand there and they say your name. So-and-so has been disfellowshipped from the Christian congregation. So they said my name, and the moment that happens, sometimes you hear people crying, and they encourage the person that's disfellowshipped to actually go to that specific meeting to show that you already have some type of remorse and that you want to come back. So you're supposed to go to that meeting, they announce your name, and then also at that specific point when they announce your name, the Jehovah's Witness community is no longer allowed to speak to you at all. So let's say you and I grew up when we've been friends since elementary school and we're both Jehovah's Witnesses, we've done everything together. I got disfellowshipped. Well, at this point, you're no longer allowed to speak to me. In fact, if I saw you at the grocery store, you would most likely go in the opposite direction just so you don't have to look at me. It's that serious. So, it's also not very easy to get back into the religion. So in order to get back into the religion, you have to write letters of repentance. And a certain amount of time has to go by between the time that you get disfellowshipped to the time they allow you to come back into the religion. So during this time of me being disfellowshipped was the loneliest years of my life. As I mentioned before, once you're disfellowshipped, you completely lose your community. Everyone you grew up with, especially for me, since I was born and raised, well, not born, I was 6 years old, but raised in the religion. So all my friends, all my community, everyone I pretty much knew and was close with was are still in the Jehovah's Witness religion. My mom is still a Jehovah's Witness. She's been a regular pioneer, which means she puts forth X amount of hours in recruiting people. My mom is still a Jehovah's Witness. My aunt is still a Jehovah's Witness. I have her husband is a Jehovah's Witness. And then I have a couple of first cousins that are Jehovah's Witnesses. I also have, like I said, friends or ex-friends that are Jehovah's Witnesses. And I tried to get back into the religion for 2 years. So I wrote my first letter of repentance. And this letter of repentance, like I said, it's almost like, I'm sorry, and then during this time too, that you're disfellowshipped, if you want to get back into the religion, you're supposed to go to the meetings. And like I said, they don't speak to you at the meeting, so they completely ignore you. So I would go to the meetings. I would try to go a little bit late so people won't come up to me and try to talk to me. And then I would leave a little early, so again, people won't try to talk to me. And I would try to study for the meetings, and studying for the meetings would entail me of reading and like going over whatever it is that specific meeting had to do. And I was allowed to speak to the elders. So I would speak to the elders and ask for like the latest publications and stuff like that came out. So I ended up moving, however, I got disfellowshipped December of 2011, and I moved to Chicago October 15th of 2012. This whole disfellowshipping, shunning thing that the Jehovah's Witnesses community does is so isolating, as I mentioned. In fact, it's so isolating that it's caused people to commit suicide. When I was 21, I had a friend that I was really close to commit suicide 3 months after she got disfellowshipped. And she's definitely not the only case. There's so many cases out there of people being shunned because their entire family does not speak to them anymore. And I've read so many cases where maybe they're the third generation Jehovah's Witnesses, and both sides of their family, their grandparents are Jehovah's Witnesses, and then they get kicked out of the religion, and literally every single person that they've known and loved no longer speaks to them. So I'm just saying, it's so freaking lonely, it's ridiculous. So I wrote one letter, and it's from December of 2011 to October of 2012. I wrote 2 letters while living in Michigan to try to get reinstated. Both of those letters were rejected because the elders told me that there was not enough time that had gone by. So when I wrote these letters of repentance, even though I wasn't going to the same Kingdom Hall I was disfellowshipped in, they send these letters to the congregation that I was disfellowshipped in, which was my ex-husband's congregation, and then they would send the letter back to the congregation that I was trying to get reinstated at, and then they would meet with me, and like 3 elders would meet with me, and then they would go over the letter, they would read some scriptures to me, and then they would let me know whether or not I was reinstated. So twice rejected while I lived in Michigan. Then I moved to Chicago to get a fresh start in my life. I was just so tired of just the whole thing. I was like, I've been disfellowshipped for almost a year now, and I did not say this, but I promised my mom I was going to get reinstated. That was like so important to her that I was going to get reinstated, and the whole community knew me as my mother's daughter because she has recruited so many people in the religion. It's crazy. So at that point, when I moved to Chicago, I was like, I just want a clean slate, I want a fresh start, and I just want to start my life over again. And in the meantime, the month that my divorce became final, April of 2012, I actually started my Instagram as well. And that slowly started growing. And I think by the time I had moved to Chicago, I already had like 30,000 followers, and maybe even more than that. It might have been like 60 or 70,000 followers. Anyways, I moved to Chicago thinking I was going to start like a meal prep delivery service. And I had enough money to last me for about 4 to 5 months of me just living on my own. So December 24th, 2012, I decided to launch my first e-cookbook, and that did really well. And then I started a project where I lived with people and I taught them how to cook healthy recipes. Because like I said, I was a household manager, chef, nanny for a family. I was with them for almost 7 years. I helped raise their son. I was with them for about 50 to 55 hours a week. I made all their meals. I did some of their dinner parties. I just did a lot of things for them. And then October, when I moved to Chicago, I still was trying to become part back of the cult. Because again, I missed speaking to my mom. I missed the whole community that had welcomed me back then. So I was definitely not trying to make any new friends, but this Instagram, this new social media platform was just a way of me being able to share without technically being friends with anyone. So I was sharing my life in this unedited way that I felt like I couldn't really share with my being the person that I am and with the situation that was going on around me. So I was interacting with people, but still not having real friends in real life. Because if I wanted to get back into the religion, those new friends that I made, I wasn't really allowed to bring them back with me since I was not allowed to be friends with any quote-unquote worldly people. So in Chicago, when I was there, I found a new congregation to go to, and I would also get there a little early, or get there a little late so no one can speak to me, and leave a little early so again no one can speak to me. And during that time, when I moved there, October 15th of 2012, and then I moved out December of 2013 is when I moved to California. During that 1 year and 2 months, I wrote 2 more letters of repentance. I met with the elders in that congregation, and at that point, there was so much stress that had already come from me moving and just me. I was just so sick and tired of just being so lonely. I call those 2 years of my life, from the time I got disfellowshipped to the time I decided that I no longer wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness. I call those 2 years my years of purgatory. They were so fucking lonely and isolating in a way that only I can truly understand, and it was really, really, really difficult. And the funny thing is, I look at it now and I don't really realize, I don't feel like I realized in that moment how lonely I was, but now that I actually have real friends and I'm encompassed with people who actually love me for me, I'm like, fuck, I was so lonely. I had no friends. The only really people that I was speaking to was Instagram, and those were not my real people that I can hug and stuff like that. And yes, I was living with families, I was helping them out, but they weren't close to me. They didn't know my situation. So going back to me trying to get reinstated or getting back into the religion. So I wrote 2 letters of repentance while I was living in Chicago, and both of those letters got rejected. And I just remember calling my sister, because she was the only real person that I was speaking to at the time that knew the whole situation. I would call my sister after each time I was rejected, and I would have a straight on panic attack and just start bawling my eyes out and shaking and just be like, I just want to get reinstated. I don't know what the problem is. It was so much stress, and I had no idea what was going to happen to me at that point. So come December of 2013, I decided I was going to move to sunny Southern California. And so I did. I packed my bags up December 26, 2013, all by my lonesome self. And I had a U-Haul in the back of my car. I had a Ford Focus at the time. And I didn't think too much of it, but I didn't really realize that my Ford Focus was not a big enough car to haul this U-Haul. So this U-Haul made my engine die. So I had a 2010 white Ford Focus that I loved, that was paid off, and my engine blew up. And then I had to go. I was 60 miles away from my starting point in Chicago. So fortunately, there was a Ford dealership not too far away from where my engine blew out, and I stayed at a hotel. And then I had to trade my car in for a Ford Escape, which is more of an SUV. And it was an older car. It was a 2008. I'm like, whatever it takes for me to get to California, I will do it. So the next morning, December 27th, I drove from Chicago, or from, actually was on I think Massachusetts was on the, where I was heading to. So I was heading back to, I was 60 miles, like I said, out of the city of Chicago. And then I kept on driving. I slept in my car one night on my way to California, and then I slept in a hotel one night. I arrived in Orange County, California, December 30th of 2013. And when I arrived in California, I didn't really know what life was going to be. All I knew was I no longer wanted to try to become a Jehovah's Witness, and I had absolutely no idea what that was going to look like. All I knew was, for the first time in my life, I just wanted to live for myself, and I no longer wanted to be in a situation where I felt like I had to please my mom or please anyone else. I just wanted to be happy, and I just wanted to live a simple life where I could do whatever I wanted to do. So I moved here, and then 4 months, I started doing cooking classes, and I go to people's houses and I cook with them. And then 4 months after I started, 4 months after I moved to Orange County, I met my now husband, And if you guys want to hear that full story of how we met and got married in 2 months, that's on our second episode of our podcast, Live Happy, Live Healthy. And we got married, and it was like a honeymoon stage in the beginning. And during that 6 months, I would say, of our first 6 months of being married, he really didn't know what the religion entailed of. And he's such a good guy, and he's just like, I'm going to win your mom's heart, because he's such a good salesperson, and he's a person that like everybody loves his energy. Everyone loves him. Like I've never met anyone that doesn't like my husband. He's just so charming. He's so witty. He's beautiful to look at, and he's like, I'm gonna win your mom's heart. So I'm like, by all means, try to win my mom's heart and see what happens. So little did he know that, you know, she's very brainwashed and she's very set in her ways. And yeah, so that didn't work out so well. But in the meantime, I had all these like conservative Jehovah's Witness clothes, and he's like, why do you still have all of these like really conservative clothes? I know that you're not thinking about being a Jehovah's Witness anymore. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. He's like, I really think you should donate them. So I ended up donating them. And then the following year, we ended up going to Peru and doing ayahuasca. And that was when I really, really found out how brainwashed I was, and how I had to really learn how to deprogram my mind. And I'm going to go really deep into ayahuasca and my other psychedelic experiences with psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, San Pedro, and ayahuasca when we go and do our podcast, our fourth podcast, which we will be recording in the next couple of days. But psychedelics have changed my entire life. So that is my story. My mom hasn't spoken to me in 7 years. In fact, when I went there, well, my entire family has stopped speaking to me for various reasons. But a year and a half ago was the last time I went back home to visit my family, and my uncle, who walked me down the aisle the first time around because my father wasn't speaking to me, he had a pamphlet that said like return to Jehovah and all this other bullshit stuff that he actually gave to my sister, who then gave to me, because he couldn't even look at me in the eye because I'm disfellowshipped, and dare he like look at me, because then something bad will happen, because yeah. So he gave this brochure to my sister to give to me. This was, like I said, a year and a half ago, and I opened it, and my dad was standing not too far away, and I just remember opening it and also like going on a full-on anxiety attack, because I'm like, my uncle, the one that I walked down the aisle to his wedding, I was a flower girl when I was 6 years old. And as I mentioned, he walked me down the aisle. He was like a father figure to me. He couldn't even look me in the eye. All he could do was give me this fucking stupid brochure to say, go back to Jehovah. Like, what kind of person are you to not even look at somebody who is so close to you and just like disregard them as a human being? That just like infuriates me to this day. And my mom, the year before that, I had gave her a hug. I was flying in from California. I was staying a week. I was a good girl, and I tried to go back every summer to visit my family, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to visit your family every single year if you live out of town, no matter what your relationship with your family is like. You're supposed to do that, but I don't do that anymore because I'm done pleasing people. So as I mentioned, this was 2016, the summer. Stayed with my family for a week. And I see my mom and I give her a hug. And she says to me, you're not supposed to do that. And she literally stood there emotionless and stood there like she was a pillar of salt with like no empathy, no emotion. Like I was just like this complete stranger giving her a hug. It was just unbelievable. And when she wanted to speak to me, she would say something to my sister, who then would say something to me. It's a shit show when I went there, but haven't been there in a year and 2 months. I think the last time I was there was the summer of, I think it was June or July. It was June. It was June of 2017, and now we are heading into March of 2019. So that's my story, guys, and I am just, I finally made this video. I'm sweating, I'm nervous, and hopefully, I have made this video because I know that there's a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses out there that are struggling. And my conclusion with this video is the only person that you need to make happy is yourself. Everyone else does not matter. And until you're happy, nothing else matters. And stop living for other people because they're not living your life. You need to live your own life. And with that, I just want to say goodbye and thank you guys so much for watching this entire video. And if you have a comment or questions, feel free to reach out to me via Instagram, direct message, or check out my new podcast too, because that podcast that I just mentioned too, while I'm filming right now, I'm going to be recording, I think in the next day or two, the podcast about ayahuasca, DMT, combo, which is the frog venom ceremony that I did, and other psychedelics such as magic mushrooms and LSD and San Pedro. I'm super pumped about recording about how all those psychedelics have completely changed my life in the last 3.5 years. All right. All right, guys, I think that is it. That's a wrap. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.